The following is a vintage Quixotic presentation. This is a podcast alert. The art of enthusiasm. Hey, this is Brooke, and as always, I am with
Rodney Face.
This is the Art of Enthusiasm podcast, a super spontaneous podcast, only recorded when we are inspired by something. And this episode is super inspired. So inspired, in fact, I'm not even going home to edit it and put in the music or anything, or take out the racist things we may say, or the bigoted things we may say, or the gender insensitive comments that Rodney may make.
And not to mention the pauses. Take out the pauses.
What do you mean?
The pauses. The ums and the uhs and the sips of drinks. And
there's very few pauses.
The gaps between the words.
Well, I don't do that. Anyway, this is a new episode, and it's all about... I didn't mean to be mean there. Sorry about that. Anyway, so this is an episode called Licorice Pizza, What We Think of the Brand New Trailer by Paul Thomas Anderson. We love Paul Thomas Anderson, but we have some questions, we have some worries. First, Friday, give us a synopsis of the trailer. Literally, we saw it for the first time a half an hour ago and just rewatched just now. That's it. No background info on it. Our friend Michael Green, thank you, Michael, he sent us the trailer. So we're among the very first of maybe 10 million to see this trailer. So go ahead.
The first thing you see are some young people, and they're not strikingly attractive. You know, you get a kind of a derpy, kind of unattractive dude, but he's charming and he's got charisma. And you got a gal who's, she's cute, but she's not strikingly attractive. That's not to say she's unattractive. She's got that kind of a, comic girl charm.
With probably a very, spot-on, sarcastic, cynical sense of humor that most adults don't even get.
Right, but you can tell she's got a good sense of herself and, a strong sense of character and being, which will amplify the kind of average, appearance into desirability.
And clearly they are sort of like the odd couple, I get the impression that her parents are, fresh from some other country. And that one scene sounds like the father has an accent. So likely they frown upon her dating an American boy.
Yeah, she's the first generation American of probably immigrant parents, probably Eastern European, judging by the accent.
Yeah, and she probably still carries some of the hygiene habits. It looks like she's a little hairy, I think.
Oh, I didn't notice that at all. I noticed she was a little...
Well, like her eyebrows were kind of bushy, and this is before Brooke Shields. And she didn't have any eyeshadow on, which is big, like blue eyeshadow,
Yeah, but she had a great nose, and I actually kind of like the eyebrows.
Well, it's funny, in the scene where she says, why am I hanging out with so-and-so and his 15-year-old friends? She really does look like she's about 30, and that would be a much more interesting storyline, the 30-year-old girl hanging out with the 15-year-old boys. But somehow, I believe she's likely intended to be portraying a 17-year-old.
Are you saying she doesn't look a young 30, she looks an old 20?
In that particular shot. Look at that particular shot, folks. That's a 30-year-old woman. Anyway, I'm sure she's a fine actress. Let's go over what we like, or what we are expecting to like, and what we love about Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson is about my age. I'm 52 years old. But when a dude was 25, he directed and wrote and created one of the most successful and accurate time period theme movies, and that was Boogie Nights. Holy crap, do I love this movie, because not only does it depict the 70s in such a realistic manner, it also introduced at least me to a whole crew of actors that went on to become superstars, and I often cite Boogie Nights as being the springboard for Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Help me out here, Ronnie. What's his face? The blonde dude. Oh, this is spontaneous, folks. We're going with it from Shameless. Don Cheadle.
Oh yeah, that's where he got his start.
The dude from Step Brothers that we love.
Tom C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly, thank you.
So all these actors that I thought that I had never noticed before, I feel like the springboard for them all.
Well, Mark Wahlberg.
Right.
And William H. Macy, who...
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, William H. Macy. Heather Graham, she got a lot of face time in that.
And that was sort of an iffy part in her career, I think. Or I guess that was definitely during her high. But she wasn't given many roles. She had a very minor role in Get Shorty, the TV show recently, which I loved.
Yeah, and Paul Thomas Anderson, he's 51 years old now. So when he made that movie, it doesn't seem like he would have been of an age that he, was making it from memory, but he might have had some kind of romanticized, idea about it, growing up not in the 80s.
Which I did too. So when it shows, the camera pans around Mark Wahlberg's room and you see the Farrah poster and all the 70s memorabilia, that's the stuff I love. So when you get a movie that's called Licorice Pizza, now if you don't know, Licorice Pizza was a major record store chain, music chain, in the 70s. And when you go buying used albums, even though they're all cleared out now, it used to be that every other record you'd buy had a Licorice Pizza sticker on it. So I never even got to experience Licorice Pizza, having come from back east. So when I hear that there's a movie called Licorice Pizza based in the 70s, that excites me very much. And knowing that Paul Thomas Anderson's at the helm, I'm thinking, awesome. Then I watched this trailer. Well, besides the fact that the only song, it's a beautiful David Bowie song, but it's not a Bowie song that takes me back to the 70s by any means. I didn't get exposed to Bowie too much later, but it's not a song that makes me think, yes, this is the 70s as I remember it. I mean, I get it, but it's only the one song. Fine, that's cool. But let's look at the imagery. You don't see a record store once in the trailer. I assume that somebody worked in a record store in the movie, works in a record store, or maybe like one of their pastimes is going to Licorice Pizza to buy records, but there's no hint of it.
Well, there's a suggestion that the main male character, is perhaps an aspiring musician. He does say, I'm an artist, a creator, a maker, so there's some suggestion that he's involved in the music industry.
Well, there's a shot of them filming in a car, like a student production or something. So I think he's probably more likely a filmmaker. But the actor himself, and one of the exciting things about the trailer is that there's none of the old faces. Just as Boogie Nights was a springboard for a host of actors, and at least in my eyes was a springboard, this film appears to be taking new talent and potentially, catapulting them to fame as well. This lead actor, however, he looks to me like the next Jack Black, and I don't need the next Jack Black personally, but we have no idea what direction his career will go. But there was at least one scene where his delivery was like straight up Jack Black in my eyes. But he's like the frumpled, pimply-faced kid. Okay, cool. And his friends, they all have the windswept, disheveled hair like we did in the 70s. But the 70s imagery, outside of maybe a few bicycles, kind of stops there.
Yeah, and in the trailer, the only recognizable actor is Bradley Cooper, who, appears to be playing
Chris Christopherson.
Which, of course, there's a real ironic tie-in because in A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga, he plays the same role that Chris Christopherson played in the version with Barbra Streisand. And in the trailer, you hear him, asking the kid, do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? Barbra Streisand, married to her, something to that extent.
Yeah, and it's funny, like the kid's pronouncing her name, and I always thought it was Barbra Streisand, but I guess it's Barbra Streisand. No. Oh, I don't want Chris Christopherson getting mad at me, or Bradley Cooper. But that part looked kind of funny. But what it looks like is a feel-good coming-of-age film, hardly the type of film you'd expect from Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, that's what it looks like on the surface. With Paul Thomas Anderson, you never know. Especially since the trailer concludes with a scene of the boy and the girl running into each other's arms. It almost kind of feels like you're seeing the whole movie, and at the end, they end up together. But this is Paul Thomas Anderson, so one of them could have cancer or God knows what. And I think I'd almost prefer that to it's a happy movie and they end up together.
Yeah, I'd say, apparently the young male actor, his name is Cooper Hoffman. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. That's how new he is. But his appearance kind of strikes me as a child, meme who is tracked down years later and then interviewed like, hey, how does it feel to be, famous because of that photo that your mom took, back in 1997 or whatever, like the Kazoo Kid or whatever. He kind of has that appearance, like, oh, you can see the cute little kid in that awkward, photo, whatever it is, but not a striking, star face now. The gal, Alana Haim is her name. Apparently Sean Penn is in the film, and Tom Waits too, but you don't see them in the trailer, so we're not getting that.
Well, you may. There's an old dude on a motorcycle, and that part was the most intriguing part to me in the whole trailer, where he's like, I'm coming, Nancy. speeding off on a motorcycle. It's like, okay, who's this random old guy in the film? But again, Paul Thomas Anderson's last few films, all of his films have been hit or miss. For me, Boogie Nights is awesome. Magnolia is awesome. Hard Eight is awesome. Everybody loved There Will Be Blood. Me, not so much. And then he did another film, I think was also based in the 70s with Nick Cage. I remember nothing about it, but it was nothing to write home about.
St. Vincent, right? Wasn't that his work?
Yeah. I think he's had like a hit or miss career. He did do The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and as great as Philip Seymour Hoffman is, and I love that man's acting, and R.I.P., freaking Joaquin Phoenix stole the show in that movie. What an amazing performance he turned in. But I think maybe with Paul Thomas Anderson's hit or misses, he may decide to go for the feel-good movie of the winter. Who knows?
It does look like a feel-good. It looks like lighthearted, And you can get immersed in the personal drama of the characters, but you don't have to take it home with you after the movie.
Yeah, but if you're going to set it in the 70s, give me the 70s. Paul Thomas Anderson likely have reminisced similarly about the 70s. And obviously he's a great artist. When he was 25, he did Boogie Nights, and everybody was blown away. I also hear he's very pretentious in person. I met him once, and it was a night that he wasn't signing autographs or taking pictures. But for me, a 6'5" giant who looks intimidating, he did acquiesce and allow me to get a photo with him, and thank you for that, Paul. But other than that, he seems pretentious. When you listen to the commentary on Boogie Nights, and he's just kissing Mark Wahlberg's ass. And Mark Wahlberg's like, I got to get out of here, Paul. I got my buddies waiting. Paul's like, wait a minute, Mark. Let me wash your car. Let me wash your car. That was his complimentary phrase. He's like, let me compliment you. I'm going to wash your car right now. Well, Paul, wash the car of your fans from time to time, because they're the ones that allow you to have the living that you have. I have no idea what kind of privilege you come from, but to be 25 to be making Boogie Nights, I imagine likely you come from some sort of privilege that most of us don't, and if you don't, I apologize. And not that there's anything wrong with that, except in today's leftward, insane society.
Right. But, the interesting thing, though, is if Boogie Nights and Licorice Pizza are now going to be the bookends of his career, at least for the time being, and they're 70s movies, so his career is being bookended by the 70s, whereas Boogie Nights, is people in their 20s, living a lifestyle of excess, pornography, nightclubs, limousines, narcotic consumption, just pure hedonistic excess, then it looks like Licorice Pizza, will be the high schoolers who can only dream of being old enough to get into those places, to get into those places of fantasy, which probably actually are not places of dreams, but of broken dreams once you actually get there.
Well, in Boogie Nights 1980, the coming of the 80s signifies the broken dreams that are
you get a murder suicide.
Yeah,
and that kind of actually was a great little commentary, because the excesses of the 70s was the pre Reagan era of the war on drugs, and the pre-grim specter of AIDS death that was the 80s. So if the excesses of the 70s was punished by deadly sexual transmitted disease, and now consequences of drug addiction, drug arrest, prison sentences, and whatnot, then New Year's Eve 79-80 was perfectly portrayed by a murder suicide. If it's not going to drive you to kill yourself, it might drive someone else to kill you.
And I gotta tell you, in Boogie Nights, Don Cheadle, he's jumping from trend to trend. So in the beginning of the movie, he's working in the stereo store, and he's all into the urban cowboy thing. And he's trying to sell a dude a stereo, and he's got his cowboy gear on. It's hilarious. And then when the celebration, the New Year's Eve party for 1980, he's got like Rick James,
Egyptian, old Egyptian kind of jewelry. Right.
He can't find his identity. That's classic Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, you're talking about a multitude of subplots with this great cast. Now, in this film, it looks like we got, in fact, come to think of it, the main character reminds me of Richard Dreyfuss in American Graffiti. Just sort of the pimply-faced, disheveled, for lack of a better word, anti-hero. So I think we could sum up, potentially, because you never know, you just never know. You can't judge a movie from a trailer, but we're just judging the trailer. I think we can just agree that this movie looks like two ordinary kids who could consider themselves or are actually outsiders, in the high school, like they don't belong, and they're super smart and cynical to just about everything, but they find each other. And at first, initially, like obviously the girl is, cynical towards him, but apparently he wins her over, and it's a happy-go-lucky love story. I think that's what we can expect.
And it gives enough information to maybe infer, if when, any of you listeners were in high school and were not immediately part of the in crowd, but one of the sub-youth culture, crowds that aspired and hoped to be, popular or make it into the in crowd. You tried to date up, you tried to friend up, which meant that your actual peers, your real friends, were people that you wanted to snub because they were not going to, excel you in any way. But maybe this movie, kind of gives enough information that maybe it's a story of these people who aren't trying to friend up.
Absolutely. They look like they want nothing to do with the in crowd.
Right. They're going to perhaps excel each other, not by climbing up anyone, but by mutually lifting each other, to a height that maybe even transcends, high school popularity, high school in crowd.
Yeah, I mean, these characters look like they want nothing to do with that, and that their independence, which is clear, I think, in the trailer, indicates that they probably will excel in life, after graduation without being part of any clique, and that's sort of maybe the message. I don't know. It's just a trailer, but.
And then something I initially pointed out to Brooke after we first watched it was, now, I'm 46 years old. Brooke's like 49, I think, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah. But
39.
It may be very tempting and very easy for people of our age to see a trailer, which is clearly a coming-of-age movie, placed in a nostalgic era, and be very cynical about it. Very tempting to do that. But it might be worth holding off on that cynicism. Why is that? I haven't entirely formulated that idea. But no matter what era or epoch that, coming of age is, and coming of age is usually teenager, we experience the same things, but just in different scenery and different brands. And so maybe it shouldn't be immediately dismissed with cynicism or that desire to sigh, oh God, another one of these. We had this, back in the 90s with SLC Punk, or we had this back in the early 80s with Suburbia, which actually was the antithesis of a kind of a coming of age.
Well, I have a pretty good track record predicting storylines or predicting the way a film will transpire. When the new Twin Peaks came on, I wrote this elaborate, lengthy blog. Will Twin Peaks answer the questions that were left with the original Twin Peaks, or will it leave us further confounded? Will it confound us even more and make us think, what the heck is going on? And that's exactly what happened with the new Twin Peaks. So I kind of nailed that one. With this one, I think I'm nailing it. It's just a lighthearted, fun romp, but you never know. And I'm not judging the film. My initial disappointment comes from the title, Licorice Pizza, because that makes me say, Paul Thomas Anderson, Licorice Pizza, bring on the 70s, baby. Show me the 70s. I want to see it again. And that's not what I got in the trailer at all.
Right, but but whose eyes are we going to see it through? These teenagers. So in Boogie Nights, we see the 70s through people.
But it's called Licorice Pizza.
Right. Yeah.
I want 70s music. I want 70s record stores.
Yeah, and the record stores were always the place to hang out. Even for me as a youth in the late 80s and early 90s, and I remember vinyl, Licorice Pizza, when I was a kid. That was something my parents listened to. I remember the Yentl soundtrack. I remember Julio. I remember everything being on these big pictorial, vinyl records and record sleeves. For me in the 80s, when I was getting into my own music, it was already on its way out. But I listened to punk music, which has always been intentionally fringe, desiring of the fringe. And whereas mainstream music artists were not making vinyl anymore, you could always get your punk rock heroes on vinyl. And so there was a little bit of rebelliousness in that. But you also, there was almost more attention paid to vinyl releases by those artists. You know, you got booklets about the band. You knew what they stood for, their philosophies, who their friends were, what their everyday life was. You got lyric sheets, you got posters, and the sleeve itself was something beautiful to put on your wall. You know, if you want to see Henry Rollins, you know, smashing a reflection of himself in a mirror, you know, there you go, hang it on your wall, and then wait for your mom to say, like, is everything okay, son?
Well, if this movie is going to be a mainstream, feel-good flick, like I think, that I want a mainstream approach. That means in the background, I want nods or references to Kiss, Star Wars, Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, $6 Million Man. I want a visual feast of the 70s, and that could be a cheap gimmick, but it's set in the 70s. It's called Licorice Pizza. That's what the audience wants.
Right, you know, and you know, Paul Thomas Anderson, being 51, you know, he's our age. And so you can ask, you know, why is he making a nostalgic, you know, coming-of-age flick? And, you know, how is he going to represent the era in which it takes place? Maybe he's of that age, you know, where you feel a certain fondness, you know, for the thing of youth, while also feeling a disconnection to the actual maybe youth of today, because maybe they don't understand or appreciate those things because they haven't been exposed to it. Or maybe even worse, they are glomming onto aspects of it, but in the view of somebody that maybe lived through it, are missing the heart of it entirely. And that's also another very cynical and easy pit to fall in.
Well, you know, I believe that the youth of every generation lives through the same shit, same pressures, same desires. All that changes is what's happening in pop culture at the time. And another element in the trailer that it's slight. It looks like there's a very pretty girl. You only see her for a second. I'm going to assume that while he's courting his co-star, you know, the female co-star, a pretty girl comes along who catches his eye, and she may disrupt things, you know, by flirting with him because he may be like, oh wow, so-and-so's looking at me, you know, and she's in the, like you said, she's in the more popular clique, or she's, you know, more attractive. Something tells me that she's going to be the sort of second act game changer in the film, where the star questions his motivations.
I would be very impressed, you know, with Anderson if he took that character instead of using her, you know, as a you know, a character development point, you know, or you know, she being the desirable thing once attained demonstrates how actually undesirable that is. You know, that kind of thing, like you don't know how good you have it until you see how bad it can be, and how good you think you want it when you get there. That actually might be the thing that shows you how bad it really is and how good you had it before. I'd be impressed if you avoided that you know, that kind of relevant but cliche you know, characterization.
Well, what we don't want to see is toward the end of the film, the girl's immigrant parents you know, get her an arranged marriage, and just before she's about to get married, you know, the young fella breaks in and says, I love you, and she defies her parents' wishes. You know, that's cliche. Why not give us something like it doesn't work out between them and a kid shoots up his school, you know? Or
oh, man, that's dark. But, you know.
But it's Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully he gives us a twist